Welcome back to another story time that's creepy. Today's creepy episode is, you guessed it, The Frozen Shadow 3, The Birth of Darkness. Shall I begin? Aye. Make sure to like and subscribe. Black Hollow, 1889. The year was 1889. At the small settlement of Black Hollow was nothing more than a collection of humble cabins hidden deep within the unforgiving Canadian Rockies. The winters were brutal, with snow drifts that could swallow a manhole, and nights so dark that even the bravest soul would shudder. But the settlers were hardly folk, drawn by the promise of untouching land and the chance to carve out a new life in the wilderness. Among them was a man named Carrick, tall and imposing. Carrick was known, I just want to call him Rick. Rick was known for his skill as a trapper and a hunter. He had come to Black Hollow with his wife, Margaret, and their young daughter, Alicia. I don't know. They lived on the outskirts of the settlement, closer to the forest than anyone else dared to be. The locals respected Rick, but there was something about him that set him apart, a coldness in his eyes, a distance in his manners that had others uneasy. The forest that surrounded Black Hollow was old, ancient even, and the settlers had long believed it to be cursed. They spoke in a harsh tone of strange lights seen flickering among the trees at night, of voices carrying on the wind that seems to come out of nowhere. But Rick scuffled, and such super situations. He was a man of the earth, practical and unknowing, with no practice of tales of the spirits and shadows. It was the winter of 1889 when everything changed. The snow had come early that year, blanking the land, blocking the land in a thick, suffocating silence. Supplies were running out low, and the game had and the game had all but vanished from the forest. Desperate to provide for his family, Rick ventured deeper into the woods than he ever had before, determined to find something, anything, to bring back. Days passed, and there was no sign of Rick. The people of Black Hollow began to be worried about Margaret. Remained calm, confident that her husband would return. But as the days turned into weeks, and then 2, her confidence wavered. The townspeople searched the forest, calling his name, but the only answer they received was a howling wind and the eerie silence of the trees. On the 15th day, Rick returned, but he was not the same. He stumbled into a town. Grant, weird and wild eyes, his clothes torn and his skin pale as death. The men who found him were shocked. He looked as if he had aged 10 years, the span of 2 weeks. His once vibrant eyes were now sickly yellow, summer yellow, glowing with an unnatural light that made the townsfolk shiver. When questioned, Rick would say a little of what had happened to him in the forest. All he could speak of was a cave deep in the heart of the woods, where he had taken shelter from the blizzard. He claimed he had found something there, something ancient, something evil. But when pressed for details, he will fall silent, his gaze distant, as if he were staring into a nightmare. Only he could see. It wasn't long before the changes in Rick became more apparent. He grew colder, more distant. His once strong frame was wasting away until he was a little more than a shadow of the man he had been. The people of Black Hollow whispered of curses and dark spirits, but no one dared to confront him. They watched from a distance as he retreated into the forest each day, spending hours alone among the twisted trees. When the disappearance began, it started with animals. Livestock found slaughtered with bodies drained of blood. But soon, it was people who went missing. First a trapper, then a young woman gathering firewood, and finally one of the town's children. The settlers were terrified. convinced that some wild beast was stalking the woods, but there was no sign of any animal large enough to do such a thing. One night, as the blizzard raged outside, Margaret woke to find Rick standing at the foot of their bed. His eyes glowed into the darkness, and his smile was wide, too wide, as if his mouth had been stretched beyond its natural limits. "Rick," he whispered. His voice was rasping echo. "Where is she?" Margaret's heart froze. She hadn't heard their daughter breathing. She leaped out of bed, calling her name, but there was no answer. Rick was gone. She ran to the door, but Rick caught her by the wrist of his grip, cold as ice. She's with them now, he said, his voice hollow. They've claimed her, just as they claimed me. Margaret tore herself free and fled into the night. Her screams lost the howling wind. The townsfolk gathered torches in their hand as they searched the forest, but they found no signs of Rick. What they did find was Rick standing by the frozen pond, his face twisted in a weird smile. "What have you done, Rick?" one of the men shouted. But Rick only laughed. A sound that echoed through the trees like the cry of dying animals. They called me, Rick said, his voice carrying over the wind. "I am theirs now, and soon you will be too." The men advanced, but as they did, the ground beneath their feet began to crack. The ice on the pond split open, revealing the bodies of those who had disappeared, frozen, their faces locked in expressions of unimaginable horror. Before the townsfolk could react, Rick stepped into the pond. The ice reformed around him, sealing him in as if the very forest itself was swallowing him whole. His eyes glowed beneath the surface, watching them until the ice froze solid once more, leaving no trace of the man who had once been Rick. The townspeople fled, abandoning Black Hollow to the darkness, but the story of what happened there lived on, passed down to generations. They spoke of the man who ventured too deep into the forest and found something that should have remained buried. They warned the shadow. They warned of the shadow that still linger, that's still waiting for those who dare to trespass into its domain. For its heart of the forest, under the ice of that cursed pod, Rick waited no longer a man but a creature of the darkness, his eyes glowing with sickly yellow light, forever trapped in the frozen shadows. Anyways, guys, hope you like it. Tell me if you want to see, I don't know, a David horror story, and I'll see you later. Yeah!